Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Unconquered Podcast film session. Today, we're going to be talking about the 2019 defensive line class, and I'll be taking you through sort of a Cliff's Notes version of how I do my evaluation, and also a little bit about how to build your own capacity to be able to make evaluations, do good evaluations yourself, and be able to take a look at a kid's film and be able to tell more or less what you're looking at a little bit better than the average person. I won't get into too much of the technical stuff, like when you're doing hardcore evaluating, your 1 to 7 scale on various attributes for each position and all that. I'm not gonna get into that sort of thing. But what I will do is, again, I'll talk about the sorts of things that you need to do to be a good evaluator on the lay level and keep things pretty simple here as we go through some of these players. Now, the first thing that I want to emphasize is that anytime you're gonna try to do an evaluation or do any sort of evaluative exercise with high school players, looking at high school tape and all that, one of the first things that it's important to do is actually to cleanse your palate, as it were. You think about how a lot of top chefs, for example, when they get into a kitchen, the first thing that they're going to do is actually taste. They're going to eat or taste, say, some mild Swiss cheese before they do anything else in the kitchen. And the reason is that they want to have a sense of where their taste is for the day. So, based on sleep, based on other things you've eaten, various things may throw your taste buds just a little bit off. But if you know how Swiss cheese tastes and that's your 0, then you know sort of where everything else fits on that scale, and you can work out from there. Scouting is a lot like that. One of the things that it's important to do on a fairly regular basis, if you're going to do a good job evaluating, is you want to go back and take a look at prior prospects that have and haven't worked out and evaluate what it is that you can see on their footage, and then how that translated into what you saw at the next level. So you want to actually, when you're evaluating 2019 players, you want to go back and take a look at some players from past years that have turned out to be excellent players, so that, anytime you're looking at high school film, and especially for those of us who don't have access to full game film, where you're getting to see, whether a player has, the motor to stand up through 4 quarters and all these other things, any player can look pretty good through a series of, say, 10, 15 highlights. But the ability to evaluate attributes on a better level than that, one of the things that you want to do is you want to look at prior people and say, okay, this looks good, but I want to see what great looks like first, so that I can go back and I can go, okay, where does this not quite meet the standards that I've had, that I've seen before. So one of the things that I like to do is keep a little bit of a library of players that I think came out and were legit 5 stars. Like, this is a guy that I had as a high 5-star. This is what my standard for the position coming out of high school looks like for a player of this position, who's going to play this role or whatever. And I want to go and I want to look at that first before I look at anything else. So, for example, Florida State signed a defensive tackle, a couple defensive tackles or hybrid defensive tackle, defensive ends in this class. You look at Curtis Fan Jr., you look at Malcolm Ray. These guys are guys that they're kind of tweeners. They could wind up inside, they could wind up outside. They more than likely wind up inside, but they're penetrating one gap type players with some size. So for that category, a guy that I put in as, a top guy that's come out in the last few years is Christian Wilkins, who we all know from Clemson recently. So that's where we're going to start today. We're going to look at Christian Wilkins' film, just a little bit of that, so that we can evaluate what a top prospect at those positions looks like, and then we can work from there. Now, first thing to note, by the way, Christian Wilkins, when he was coming out of high school, so you look at, he's a class of 2015, you look at his overall size and all of that, he's 6'5", 280, listed as a 4.5, so that gives you some indication of what you can kind of base off of. 6'5", 280, ends up being actually about 6'4", and he wound up at about 305 pounds in terms of his player weight. So, count on that in terms of the kind of growth that you can expect from a good player. But, normally you want to knock about an inch off and then, work with the weight that you got. So he's about 6'4", 280 here. And now we want to see what that looks like at these different positions as they move him around here. So you can see him here. And first thing to note, look at that burst. That's rare burst. And also, this is something that I look for in high school players. They generally have no idea what they're doing because they're not well coached, but there are certain things that are instinctive that I want to see. One is, what happens when he gets engaged? Does he get his hands out, and does he find his way through traffic naturally? This first thing, he gets double teamed. He gets his hand inside, gets his hands moving, and then works his way down. That's solid. You look also at this next one, and you see the effort. And the other thing that I like seeing here, and this is what I want to take note of, and it's something that followed him into the next level. Look at his pad level as he's coming through here. He's moving quickly, but look at where his pad level actually is. He's not standing straight up. See that right there? That's a flat back. Butt is in powerful position, and he's able to work through, and that's why he actually gets this block. But what I'm looking at is not the result of the play, but I'm looking at the body positions he's able to find himself in on the field, and that tells me that he's got the ability to play low. And you can see the same thing here. Watch his hips sink. Look at that. Look at that position. That right there is textbook. Flat back, butt is sort of bubbled up, and you can see good ankle flexibility, all while attacking a single gap. And then watch the burst. Split that. Keep good pad level. Find a way to stabilize in balance and work your way to the ball. That right there tells me that guy's, got a lot of capacity, especially when you get the physical traits. And then here you see the ability to disrupt. So let's go back to that. I seem to have lost my mouse. There it is. My pointer had disappeared. But watch how quickly he sheds. Boom. And then the burst. That right there, that's elite burst. That's rare. That is elite burst to the ball. And again, where are his pads when he's bursting? Down. He just plays naturally low, plays with elite burst. The other thing is, look at the arm length and all that. Yeah, there again, you see the pursuit. You see that he's able to pick those knees up in pursuit. He's an athlete, not just a big guy. And again, here, stance is high school. But again, look at the coordination, look at the adjustment. Everything is really it's the athletic ability that you see as he's moving. Nothing looks forced. And that's one of the things I like to look at, is how easy does a guy make his movement look on the field. So Dexter Lawrence is an example where everything looks easy. And again, you see the effort, you see the motor. This is a guy that loves to play, and you can see that even in the first few clips. And again, the burst here. Boom, right? I mean, this is what I want to see. This is what a 5-star looks like. Pursuit. Once again, you're seeing lateral movement, and, strong hands, very strong hands in terms of being able to pull a guy down. Lateral movement, getting to the ball. So this is what a 5-star looks like. And he is a 5-star because you're seeing all this movement on a guy that's 6'4", 280. That's easy. So now, in order to compare that, what you do is you go to the guys that sort of fit the same kind of role that he was recruited for at Clemson. First guy on that list is Curtis Fan, right? Now, Fan doesn't have a single highlight set for the entire year. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to find his mid-season highlights, and I'm going to work from those first. Already celebrating being an FSU commitment there, something that, some people value. All right, now, let's find him. Come on, why is it doing that? Okay, so we got him here. I like seeing the shedding, but one of the things that sticks out immediately after watching Christian Wilkins is notice he looks a little stiffer, right? He's not as big, obviously, but you notice that he plays a little higher and he's just a little stiffer, but disruptive. That's a good play. You do not expect, by the way, most people to look like Christian Wilkins did, but you want to set your expectations. Now, what you see here is you see a guy that one of the things that sticks out is he is really long for his height. It's another thing that I actually pay attention to. Where do his arms come to when he's standing up? And you see he's got long arms for his size. And he's got reasonably high cut overall. Plays a little higher, but overall, pretty good straightforward quickness. Pretty good straightforward quickness on that. Not quite the lateral movement. Let's go ahead and find, there he is here again. So he can play from a 2-point. And you look at him, this is a demonstration of good instincts and recognition and also motor. So he thuds, sees the ball, and then search and destroy. In a straight line, he's a load. And again, he looks the part. And again, good overall movement skills here. But I want to call to mind, you note, again, when you compare to Wilkins, you can see a little bit of the difference in terms of, see the difference in pad level. Wilkins is going to be down in here and not lose any balance for doing so. McClendon Fan plays a little higher. But good athleticism overall, just looks a little more lumbering. And so that immediately moves him down a little bit in terms of how I evaluate the position. But I'm seeing a lot of good overall traits. These are things that can translate into being a quality player at this level. Again, you see the size and the length. And there you see the hand strength. And I think so far what you find is that he's a bit more of a thudder. You notice in terms of his foot quickness, in terms of his feet, he's just a little bit more, you don't see the lightness on his feet quite to the same degree that you do elite guys. The other thing here, and we'll see this more when we take a look at Brian Burns and Josh Sweat, who we'll take a look at in a moment as well. You notice also this second step doesn't have the power that a 5-star, even a 4-star most likely is going to have. But he's got good bend here. Good, but that second step is not bending that edge, and you want to see somebody be able to bend the edge there just a little bit more by dipping. You want to see just a little bit more explosion in this second step right there. That second step is a little shorter. See how he's playing a little higher. This means it's going to take a little bit of time for him to learn to play at the level that you want there. And then you notice also, look at the hip height. You want a guy that's going to be able to get lower and get those hips sunk and then turn that corner just a little bit easier. But again, you see the athleticism overall and the length. It's just not, again, you're not looking at an elite prospect. You're looking at a good prospect. The size is definitely there. Let's go one more clip here. And here you see he does a good job of avoiding the cut. But notice also the stumble, just a little stumble right there before he settles. So you see good balance, but an elite guy almost shuffles around that. Again, good player. Actually reminds me, looking at this again, of a guy that that I played with. I'm trying to remember exactly. It's the reminiscences there. I'm just trying to remember. It's Kevin Emanuel. Come to think of it, yeah, he reminds me a little Kevin Emanuel in terms of how he moves overall. In terms of just the overall feet, the overall strength for the position, and he resembles a lot of the kind of defensive ends, the bigger defensive ends that Michigan State had put on the field over different years. And again, there's something I like to see. One last piece here. Come on, there we go. All right. This is one last thing I like to note is watch when a guy takes contact. Is he able naturally to get his hands out in front and thud? And he is a thudder, and I like that. That's natural, heavy hands for that position with a guy with that arm length is going to definitely make him a good asset at the next level. But I think ultimately, in terms of his movement, again, here you see when he comes around the edge, a little lumbering and a little high. You see how right here, this is what I'm looking at. He does not project as an edge rusher because of this, right? See that hesitation before he's able to close. That is the difference between being a top-level edge prospect and not. And so let's go ahead and actually take a look at Josh Sweat as another example of an elite guy. Again, reset our pattern. And this is Josh Sweat's junior year. See the fluidity? This is what a 5-star looks like at this size. Now, he's 6'5", 6'4.5", and he's about 230 here. That's the fluidity that you're going to see with a legit 5-star. And see the burst. You can tell the difference as soon as you go from fan to this. And again, that's nothing on Fan. Sweat, before he got hurt, was one of the best defensive end prospects in a decade. And again, you see right there, notice the long arms able to get into the chest of a guy. Really quickly. And you see the ability to strike and then sink those hips. Right here. Look at him go to bend. This is a bad field. Still, the fluidity to be able to sink those hips and turn that edge. That's special. This is special film. I mean, this is, Javon Curse type stuff. Jadeveon Clowney type stuff prior to Sweat's injury. And again, the fluidity is really rare there. So this is what you're looking for in terms of, a bigger end who has some rush capacity, getting held like crazy. And again, the burst. See just a little bit of limitation in terms of hip, in terms of ability to stay low and get the hips in there. But again, the explosion is there anyway, so this is the sort of thing that I'm doing to evaluate, right? So now, next thing, and again, the fluidity, both laterally and straight line, is rare. So next one, we're going to go ahead and take a look at Malcolm Ray. Malcolm Ray, another guy that I think he actually projects a little bit more as an inside guy. I was told recently, someone who saw him within the last few weeks, that Malcolm Ray, let's see, that's August 20th. This one's the latest one. So here's his senior film, that Malcolm Ray is up to about 270 already, and he looks excellent at that. So given that, I'm going to expect that he's going to play inside. I think he projects as a kind of Aaron Donald, is what you're hoping to get here. And you notice here, he, I think, is already quicker in terms of in short space than what Fan is. Now, he's not quite as tall, and that's really his limitation, is he's a little stubbier. But I do see some arm length. Now, that's something I like to see right there. So this shows some core strength and flexibility right here. Watch what happens. Guy gets his hands on him, And remember, he's also playing top division Florida talent. Guy does get his hands on him, and he gets sort of thrown a little bit. It looks like this would be the end for most high school players. But watch the strength through the core as he sheds that, doesn't go down, instead resets, gets his hips dipped, and then is able to get into the backfield. That is going to be... I really like Malcolm Ray. The more I see him, the more I think he's going to be a player that's probably going to be a good starter for Florida State for a while, and potentially an all-conference type guy if he's able to put on the right weight. And again, at 270 already, that's a plus. He played at about 245, 250. So again, you see here, he's going to have to get a little stronger. He's going against a weaker guy there. But again, it's the burst here that I want to see. And you see that burst and the ability to bend. And now, I don't think he's got the length to play the edge, but the ability to actually do that. And notice the ability to sink his feet. That right there, that's really impressive for a guy this big. This is getting closer to what you saw in terms of movement ability from Christian Wilkins. Right there. Boom. You see that redirection? His weight is all going that way, and then he redirects, and he doesn't need an extra step. He's strong enough through the hips and the ankles, boom, to reset, and that's why he's able to make that tackle, and that translates. Now, he's not quite as low as Christian Wilkins in terms of how low Wilkins naturally plays. He's a little higher, but the movement skills are definitely there. And again, Wilkins is doing this at 6'4", 280. I think Ray is more of a low four-star type guy, but the chance, some pretty high upside depending on how much weight he puts on. And again, right there, I love seeing that. That right there, that little skip move, that is progress. Watch this right here. Watch the feet and the hips. Right there, the feet are quick enough. You notice that he's not a plotter. His feet are much lighter than you would expect for a guy playing on the defensive line, right? 1, 2, 3, boom. And then light feet and then good to the ball. I think he's a really good pickup, and I think he's a guy that can play at Florida State. Again, I think he's an inside guy for sure, but even though he's playing outside here, but he's a guy that can play and be a good contributor. I think really as a interior pass rusher is really where he could do a lot. Similar to DeMarcus Walker, actually. I think there's some similarities here in that regard to what Walker was able to do on the inside. And again, he's not as big as Walker, but I think he's a little more flexible through the hips and has a little more lateral ability than Walker did. But overall, I like him as a prospect. I think, again, your best case scenario is to try to use him as an Aaron Donald type penetrator on the inside as a 3 technique, and work from there and use his natural explosiveness. But this is a prospect. He's one of my favorites in the class in terms of being underrated. And again, here you can see he's capable of playing with low pad level. Those hips sink. He's going to have to get a little stronger. And again, you can see he doesn't have quite the bubble in terms of the big keister that Wilkins had coming out to be able to drive through that. He's able to hold up but not drive through it. And that's really the difference. So again, good prospect. I think he's somebody that is a Florida State level player. But that's basically what you're getting. Now, True Thompson is a guy that he's a 6 foot 338 fire hydrant. Now, normally when I'm gonna look at a defensive tackle, the first place I'm going is right here to Dexter Lawrence. This is what a 5-star looks like. Now, this is ugly film in terms of not being HD, but this is what 5-star film looks like. Yikes. That's 330 pounds in high school moving like that. And you see the length. So that's what a 5-star looks like. Also playing on the outside, getting his hands in, moving laterally. Again, easy shed. The movement, playing at linebacker. Okay, so this is what a 5-star looks like at defensive tackle, at nose tackle. You can also go to Marvin Wilson, but Wilson is a step down, I think, from Lawrence in terms of his senior film. So we'll get from there. But here's True Thompson, and True Thompson, to me, the guy to compare to is actually is not so much Wilkins is not so much Wilkins or Dexter Lawrence, but rather is Niall Lawrence Stample. I think that's basically what you're getting here, and we could go and look at Niall Lawrence Stample, but you can do that without me. But that's basically what you're getting. Now the thing is, what I see here is a very high effort player and a guy with a very low center of gravity. Who, here's what I like to see. Look at him move for a guy that's 6 foot 330. You're going to expect people not to be able to move him, but what I want to see is how low can his hips go, and how well does he redirect? And he's able to do both. Right there, that showed a little bit, and that shows a little bit here. Watch his hips dip. Well, there you're just going to watch him run through a guy. But watch his hips. What you're looking for is his ability to dip his hips and rip. And there you see it. So to me, the movement skills, he does not look, his feet do not look like a guy that's 6 foot 330. Again, he's a little lighter footed for a guy this size. And that's why it kind of reminds me of Niall Lawrence Stample, who is, little short, and stubby, but also could move laterally. And you see right there fighting through. This looks like Lawrence Stample to me. And Lawrence Stample was a good player for Florida State. Ideally, you have a 5-star right ahead of him. And there you can see a little bit of the conditioning issues that come in when you're that big. But again, the ability to win in a phone booth, he has it. But basically, you want him to be one of those guys that's going to get you, by the time he's, say, a sophomore, a good 25, 30 snaps, and be that extra defensive tackle. I think he projects in the Fred Jones type role as a high floor guy for the program. A Florida State level player, not an elite player, but a guy that's going to be very hard to move. You can put him over a center and a zero and do pretty well with him. And again, he's not a guy that I think you want to be taking 70 snaps a game, but by the time he's a sophomore, say, you end up giving him 20, 25 snaps, and he can really, really do some damage for you. Now, the next guy we're going to look at is Derek McClendon. Now, before we look at McClendon, I want to look at one other from the past. Again, resetting our taste buds here a little bit. And this is Brian Burns. Because Brian Burns is basically the role that they recruited McClendon to play, to be one of those edge guys. The Burns tape, and also remember what Sweat looked like. Now, Burns here, he takes off like a space shuttle. And again, watch what I want to see here when I'm evaluating an edge guy. First of all, you notice the length is absurd. But watch the redirect, light feet, and then bend right there and get that foot in the ground and get around with that length. And again, here you can see the athleticism. And just like, and again, he was only about 210, but watch the pad level here compared to, and again, go back to Christian Wilkins as well. Look at the pad level as he comes through. See that? That is rare to be able to sustain that kind of pad level. Wow, what an athlete. To be able to sustain this kind of pad level at that height. See how he plays down, plays low? And just naturally, because he's able to bend with his with his hips. See how he's able to play low with those hips, and that's key if you're going to be able to bend the edge or to bend things coming off the edge. You have to be able to sink those hips to give a low. Wow, look at that takeoff. And again, the wingspan. This is what you look for. And again, look at how low, and also being able to redirect after. See how not clumsy, how smooth and easy he made it look like after that attempted cut block, which is actually kind of a chop block because I think he was occupied. Everything just looks so easy there. So that's what you're looking for. That's your 5-star type player. And again, he's only 220 or 210, 205 when he's doing this. So you have to take that in mind. McClendon is a full 230. He's a little bigger. And he's 6'4", according to this. I'd say that means he's probably 6'3". So now you see him. And again, after watching Burns, this looks, a little bit slower. But again, Burns is first rounder. And note again, the foot speed or the foot quickness here. That's what you're looking for. You want to look at hip bend. One thing that sticks out is he is definitely more physical in terms of his his ability, his size. He's bringing in a guy. He's a guy that's got more size here, and you can see that power there. But you also notice he sort of like Fan. There's a little bit more plodding to his steps than what you see with, say, Burns or Sweat. The fluidity of those guys on their senior tape isn't there. Not as fluid. Good player, good prospect. And, the one thing here, you can see the length. That length is really good. But again, you notice here, there's a little bit of a jerkiness to the movement compared to the 5-stars. Now, what I see here is a guy that, and again, he plays a little higher, I think, naturally. Again, partly because his hip bend and ability to explode there is not quite as advanced as what you saw with Sweat or Burns. But what I see here, actually, to be honest, is a guy that, now that's really good burst to the ball. That's something that I'm pleased to see. But what I see overall is I see a guy that probably projects even better. I think he starts out at that rush end, at the smaller end, just because that's what where his body weight and everything fits and what he was brought in to do initially. But I think, he's a little bigger frame guy, and I think he could hold up on the inside a little bit better, depending on what you're trying to do with him. I think, actually, he winds up being a guy that fits well as a strong side end. It's one of the big end in Florida State's defense by, say, year 2. Ideally, you get him, he's 230 now. If he can report at 240, that'd be even better. And then by the time he gets to sophomore year, say, let's say he's 250, 255, you can start moving him to each side a little bit. And then by the time he's a junior and you've got, say, an elite rush end, you can move him, I think, to be that strong side type guy, especially in a pass rush situation, to give you a guy that has pretty good movement skills, but is a little bigger. And I think ideally you try to get him to, say, 260 and play in that range, and I think his frame could carry it without any loss of movement, and I think that's basically what you're gonna get here. So that's what I see is a guy, and again, I like the burst off the ball, I like the length, I like the motor. This is a kid that plays very hard, but again, he's a little high there, and the explosiveness is not quite at the elite level. But I think this is a guy that can grow, and especially putting on a little bit of weight. I think he's a guy that could be a really good player, and his floor is very high. I don't see a guy here that is going to be a bust potential. I think you're getting a guy that by his third year can be a really good player and one of those foundation stones on your defense that you don't have to worry about. So I think that's basically what you're getting. Solid potential, but not. He's not Brian Burns. He's not Josh Sweat. There aren't very many of those out there, but he's in that sort of next tier where you're going to get a high floor guy and a top level, hopefully by the time he's 260, strong side end. And again, good ball skills there to be able to find the throw. Final guy we're going to look at is Quayshawn Fuller. And I think Fuller is the highest ceiling guy in this class. You can argue that it's Malcolm Ray. I think Fuller might be as well, though. I mean, I think you can argue between those two guys. But Fuller is a guy that I think has, again, capacity to play inside or out. It depends a little bit on, what other players develop. It depends a little bit on how much weight he's able to add. But you notice here, that right there, this is a different level than we've seen so far in terms of just overall physicality from the other guys in this class. I think Fuller is a guy that comes in and can contribute day one. See that right there? First of all, note when he bursts, his shoulders don't pop straight up. He's moving forward, and now look at his ability to load through the hips and throw. It's a violent hands, excellent hips there. Same thing there. This is a guy that, again, fits as a strong side guy, but now we're starting to look a little closer to a guy like Christian Wilkins. And again, the ease of movement. And he's a smart player. That's end of game. Sorry. That's end of game. Continue to wrestle with Huddle shutting off my pointer here. That's end of game. You see here, recognition. This is easy. This is a 4-star. Very clearly to me, this is an easy 4-star at 6'3", 240, 245. This to me is this jumps out because you see the ability to sink the hips. You see the bend around the edge there. You see the closing speed. See the ability to play out a 2-point, to move side to side. The footwork is there. And when he arrives angry. There is a lot of Christian Wilkins here. It's just Wilkins was doing this at 280 and he's doing it at 250. But you look at the hips. Oh, that's beautiful right there. Look at the ability to sink the hips. Come on. There we go. Look at the ability here to sink the hips and redirect. That's what I want to see at this size. Playing low. Look at how low he gets with those hips and then redirects without an extra step. That is excellent athleticism. This is one of those guys that actually, he's the kind of prototypical Alabama 3-4 defensive end over the past 8 years. And this is a player that you can expect to be getting important reps by the end of his first year if he stays healthy. This is a guy that, second year you can expect him to be, say, a strong side end starter because, again, the movement skills, the heavy hands, the length, and the ability to sink those hips and move side to side without being heavy-footed is all there. Only stuff he's missing. I mean, at 6'3", he's got pretty good length. He's not elite length. If you're looking at a 4'3" end, you want him. Your elite guys are 6'5", but he's a little bit below that. And again, the pursuit, the strong hands, everything's there here. Basically, he's just missing the height to be an elite strong side end prospect. He's missing, say, 10, 15 pounds to be a 5-star type guy. But, this is mid to high 4-star tape to me and is somebody to legitimately be excited about coming onto campus for Florida State. And we'll look at a couple more. And again, he moves people when his hands get there. Very heavy-handed, and that's something I like to see. Well, that's unfair because he's up against basically a wide receiver there, so that's, yeah. But when you see him, again, the movement, everything looks easy, and that's what you look for. So I think we'll go ahead and wrap there, but this gives you some indication of what Florida State's bringing in on the defensive line. I'm going to do this with each position group that Florida State got, but wanted to start with the defensive line. There's a few guys that we can look at there. Next position group we'll look at is linebacker. I'm going to collect that and hopefully have that up around midweek. So until then, this has been the Unconquered Podcast film session looking at the defensive line class for Florida State in 2019.